Well, welcome everyone to the virtual world of the Eastside Freedom Library and tonight's special program, Unsung Heroes for Justice, that we have co-organized with Teamsters Local 320, exploring the lives and employment of public defenders and other professionals working with public defenders in Hennepin County. I'm Peter Ratliff, co-executive director at the Eastside Freedom Library. Coming to you from my living room. Whether I'm actually wearing pants or not, I will leave to your imaginations in the world of Zoom. And I want to begin this evening's program by turning the microphone and the focus over to my friend Brian Aldis, who's Secretary Treasurer of Teamsters Local 320. Brian?
Thank you very much, Peter. Good evening, everyone. And I want to thank you and thank all of you for joining us this evening for the panel discussion, Unsung Heroes of the Justice System, Minnesota Public Defenders. The purpose of, I also want to thank, first of all, Peter, thank you very much for sponsoring the event. I also want to thank our co-sponsors, the American Association of University Professors, Minnesota Higher Education Workers Center, and Jewish Community Action. The purpose of tonight's event is to have a moderated discussion with 6 public defense workers that brings to light the challenges they and our underserved communities face in a justice system filled with inequities and unreasonable expectations. To add to those challenges, we are struggling to navigate the future of public defense in a post-pandemic era, as well as changing priorities in our work life, an era where we strive to improve our well-beings and work-life balance, all while driven to be the best for our clients that we serve. Tonight is also a plea to an agency to engage its professional workforce in designing a future that brings up morale and provides a healthier environment for its workforce. Public defenders experience caseloads that far exceed industry recommended standards, which is driven down morale and includes an immeasurable amount of uncompensated work hours, while compromising the physical and mental health of its workforce. There is also an inability to attract and retain lawyers in the public defender system and support professionals as well. This is also in part because it's an agency that refuses to compete with other public and private law firms, placing an incredible burden on the employees who choose to stay. As Peter mentioned, my name is Brian Aldis, and I am the Secretary Treasurer and Principal Officer of Teamsters Local 320. Teamsters Local 320 is the exclusive collective bargaining agent for the state of Minnesota Assistant District Public Defenders, appellate lawyers, and their support staff, legal office assistants, paralegals, dispositional advisors, investigators, and IT personnel in the district office, totaling roughly 700 workers statewide in all 87 counties in Minnesota. Teamsters Local 320 also represents nearly 400 other workers in the court system, including state of Minnesota court reporters and state court clerks, as well as 10,000 other public employees across the state. In 1999, Teamsters Local 320 led a successful organizing drive in the public defender system, led with a committee of volunteer organizers employed by the State Board of Public Defense. They organized for the ability to collectively bargain and to have a strong voice in the workplace. People working in the public defender's office suffer from low pay. They had no voice in the workplace and faced disparate treatment. Tonight, we look forward to hearing from our panelists. And now I want to go through some brief introductions of those who are joining us this evening to participate in our discussion. I'd like to recognize our sponsor, as I mentioned earlier, Peter Ratliff, Co-Executive Director of the East Side Freedom Library. Peter is a friend of labor and a great friend in our St. Paul community. Peter will be moderating our discussion this evening. We have special guest House Majority Leader Ryan Winkler from House District 46A, a supporter of the Office of the Public Defenders and an attorney himself. Representative Jamie Becker-Finn, Chair of the House Judiciary Committee from House District 42B, and an attorney with the Hennepin County Attorney's Office. Senator Jenn Mcewen from Senate District 7, and a former public defender herself. And of course, we can't forget our panelists who will be sharing their experiences, both personal and professional struggles, serving their communities in an imbalanced system. Now I'd like to turn it over to House Majority Ryan Winkler to say a few words to the audience.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you all for taking a few minutes this evening and to hear from me about the importance from a legislator's standpoint of making sure that not only we are providing for an adequate public defense for indigent clients, but making sure that the people who are providing that defense are taken care of. I think that as a state legislator, as majority leader of the House, I heard about the inadequacies of funding for public defenders in my very first session 15 years ago. And I'm proud to say that as a DFLer, we have been working to increase funding for the State Board of Public Defense ever since, and to make sure that the disparities that we're seeing aren't getting worse. We have made some progress, but not enough. I want to focus a little bit tonight on the fact that even if the legislature does its job and provides funding, we need to make sure that the Board of Public Defense is doing its job to treat you well and to make sure that you are set up to be successful in the work that you're doing. It's not possible for us to have a criminal justice system that is fair if public defenders aren't able to do their work and look after their own selves and their own lives. Pay equity or parity with prosecutors is essential. A $10,000 wage gap between public defenders and prosecutors is not fair to you, and it is not fair to the clients who count on you. The State Board of Public Defense should continue to work on that. I think that in this COVID era, we have learned that there are multiple ways of doing our work in an excellent manner. The state legislature has managed to find a way to do work on a hybrid or remote basis while serving our constituents. Numerous lawyers, prosecutors, judges, and many others have found ways to mix in-person and remote work, and you should be able to do the same thing. We've also seen the inadequacies of pandemic leave or paid leave for people who need to be away from work. As a state legislator, I've worked from the very beginning to make sure that our workers' comp system was adequately providing presumption in law that a COVID diagnosis was, or that COVID was contracted at work, in making sure that workers actually can get the workers' comp they need. We did that from the beginning. We tried to provide numerous avenues to get compensation for workers who had gone the extra mile and done extra work, and yet we still see resistance. There is no reason why people who are unable to work, who have to take a break because they are on quarantine or because they're sick or a family member is sick in a pandemic, shouldn't have access to paid leave. That is a basic requirement that everybody should have. I also want to just mention that it's critically important that we address the issue of caseloads. And this is true both for the public defenders and for many prosecutors that I've talked to. We have a system that is being overwhelmed right now. We're asking people to put their health at risk, not just from COVID, but due to stress, due to being worn down. We're asking people to put their lives and their families on the line. We're asking people to do work that is uncompensated, and none of that should happen. We should adequately fund a system of public defense, and then we need to make sure that the benefits of the funding that the legislature is providing are actually getting to the public defenders as workers. It is fundamental that workers who are doing constitutionally mandated jobs like yours are actually treated fairly. And as many of you know, I am a candidate for Hennepin County Attorney in the next election. I will not be running for re-election to the State House. And I believe strongly that we cannot have a fair system of justice unless public defenders are equally paid, are able to handle the caseloads given to them, and are treated fairly in the workplace. I don't think justice is served with an imbalance between prosecution and defense. I think it has to be balanced in order for justice to be served. And so if I am fortunate to be elected Hennepin County Attorney, I can promise you that I will continue my efforts that as I've begun them in the legislature to make sure that your work is respected, that your salaries are paid and are adequate, and that you have a voice in the workplace that helps you do the work on behalf of your clients, because it is fundamental to justice. Your working conditions, your voice in the workplace are fundamental to justice. And I want to say that the Board of Public Defense needs to take that seriously if it's going to fulfill its mission to provide for public defense for indigent clients. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Majority Leader Winkler, for those comments and recognizing the imbalance that the system has, and for your willingness to work hard to improve the funding and keeping this and making this system whole. Thank you very much. I'd like now very much to welcome Senator Jenn Mcewen.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate being able to join you just for a little bit this evening and offer you just some brief words of encouragement and thanks. It is correct that I used to be a public defender. I was for about 3 years here in Duluth. And, you know, I would say that, you know, one of the first times when I was at one of the conventions for public defenders in general, this is after I finished law school, and I came together with other public defenders. I'm sure many of you had this experience where after coming fresh out of law school, I was surrounded with this group of people who were just amazing. And I felt like, these are my people. I found them. These are the lawyers who I want to be like. This is the work that I want to do. These are my heroes. These are the people who are doing the work, the real work. And so I did that work for 3 years. And some of the experiences that I had as a public defender, the secondary trauma that I experienced, bearing witness to some of the things that our clients go through and live through, are things that, you know, haunt me to this day and also motivate me and inspire me as well. So it was very formational for me, all of those experiences and the relationships that I built during that time. So I just wanted to thank all of you for doing that incredible work. I know how hard it can be, how much it takes to stay in it, to do it really well, to forge those relationships with your clients and to fight for them day in and day out, especially in the face often of judges, prosecutors, other people in the system who sometimes don't respect you the way that they should or treat you as a professional in the way that they should. It's tremendously difficult work on a good day. And I know that. So I just want to thank all of you for sticking in and doing the real champion work of our system. You provide this hope and spark of humanity in a system that can often be brutal for the people who are coming through it. And so thank you. Thank you for being with those people, for providing them zealous, strong representation, for being there with them through those difficult times going through our criminal system. So that work is just so important, and I want to thank all of you so much. And I and other representatives and senators at the state legislature will be there to fight at the legislature and to try to be a voice as best as we can for your interest and the interests of your clients. And I know that, my office is always here. If you're ever having an issue you'd like to talk about or meet with me about, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd always love to hear from you and visit with you and do our best to be advocating at the state legislature for you. So thank you very much.
Senator Mcewen, thank you so much for the kind words and the recognition of the work that public defenders do day in and day out. And I also want to say that I appreciate the fact that you mentioned secondary trauma. And I think that's so important to recognize that these folks face those experiences on a daily basis in their work representing their indigent clients. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to Peter Ratliff now for an opportunity for all of us to hear from our public defenders.
Thank you, Brian. And thank you, Representative Winkler and Senator Mcewen. I want to thank everybody who is tuned in. We have a remarkably large audience with us, which is indicative of how significant and interesting people find the subject matter that we're discussing tonight. If you're unfamiliar with the Eastside Freedom Library, I just want to say briefly, we are now almost 8 years old. We are a 501c3 nonprofit lodged in a historic Carnegie Library building on the east side of St. Paul. Our mission is to inspire solidarity, work for justice, and advocate for equity for all. We now have more than 26,000 books on our shelves, focused in the histories of workers, immigrants, women, people of color, GLBTQ folks, people whose stories have typically been swept into the shadows and the margins. We're trying to bring these stories into the center of our awareness. And using programming during the pandemic virtually, using Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube as a way to do it. We hope that you'll become more interested in the work we're doing and let us know if there are things that you would like to see us organize panels or presentations around. I want to thank my colleague Carla Reilly, who is handling the tech, the Zoom and the live stream to Facebook. I want to thank Gus Fremke, who is with Teamsters Local 320, and Gus did a stint on the board of the Eastside Freedom Library. And this program tonight was his idea, and he's put much of it together, recruiting the participants and providing us with questions to discuss. I want to just say to everyone who is out there listening and watching, we want you to use the chat function in Zoom if you have questions or comments. If you're watching via Facebook, please use the comment function. Carla and I will be trolling the chat and the comments and bringing questions and comments to the attention of our panelists. So that's our plan. We are recording this conversation tonight. The recording will ultimately be archived on the Eastside Freedom Library's YouTube page, so that if there are people who were unable to be with us tonight, they will still be able to access the conversation. So I want to introduce our panelists. Far too brief bios, but give you an idea of who is with us. Scott Knox has been involved with public defense since 2008, is retired from the Coast Guard. As a part-time public defender, he handles felony and gross misdemeanor cases in McLeod County. Scott also has a PhD in criminal justice and taught criminal justice at Brown College for 9 years, and owns the Glencoe Law Office. We will be hearing from Ginny Barron, who has been a public defender for approximately 10 years. She began as a part-time public defender, but now works full-time in southwestern Minnesota. She's handled juvenile delinquency, juvenile protection, and criminal cases ranging from misdemeanor to felony level offenses. She's currently a member of the statewide DNA team and enjoys utilizing her forensic knowledge in defending her clients. Andrea Anderson has been a legal office assistant with the Board of Public Defense for 9 years. She currently works in Hennepin County, supporting attorneys who represent defendants charged with serious felonies. Andrea is also one of 2 union stewards for the support staff. Kyle Mcarthur has been a public defender investigator in southern Minnesota since 2007 and is a local 320 union steward representing his fellow employees since 2008. A U.S. Army veteran, Kyle was born and raised in North Minneapolis, but has made rural Minnesota his home since 1995. Ann Marcotte is an experienced criminal defense attorney and part-time public defender in the 9th Judicial District. She currently serves as Aitkin County Commissioner, Board Chair of District 5. She's been the recipient of the Honorary Award of Outstanding Services for Victims of Domestic Abuse. Darcy Sherman has been a public defender in Hennepin County for over 8 years. She works in the conflicts unit, handling cases ranging from misdemeanors to first-degree murder. When Darcy has spare time, she works on collaborative target litigation, including statewide litigation on marijuana cases and Brady issues with the Minnesota Police. She's a graduate of the University of Minnesota Law School. So we have a lot of experience and interesting backgrounds for the folks who are joining with us tonight. We're going to start with the question, why did you become a public defender? And Scott Knox has volunteered to provide us with the response. Scott.
Well, thank you, Peter. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. You know, when I retired from the Coast Guard, I thought that kind of it was a natural transition to when I decided to go to law school to maybe be a prosecutor. But the local prosecutor's office didn't really accept interns, and they kind of suggested maybe I talk to the public defense system, and I did, and I volunteered, and well, it didn't take long to find out that being a public defender is a difficult job. Every day you're pushing the rock up the hill, and you know, I learned a lot through that process. And tomorrow I've got a jury trial, criminal jury trial for a felony that starts at 8:30 in the morning for a public defense client, and it made me think about you know, why do we exist? Why are we here as public defenders? And it really goes back to the case of Gideon versus Wainwright. I wanted to talk about that for a minute, maybe a few minutes. You know, because that case goes back to 1961, and it's fascinating because, you know, this man who was convicted of a crime, and just to go through that quickly, you know, it goes back to June 3rd of 1961. There's a burglary in a pool room in Panama City, Florida. And there was an unknown person that broke in, smashed some stuff, took some things, stole some change, a bunch of change, and perhaps some wine. And later that day, there was a witness that said they saw Clarence Earl Gideon at a pool room around 5:30 that morning, and perhaps leaving there with a wine bottle and some change in his pocket. Based on that evidence alone, he was charged with the crime of committing larceny, petty larceny. And when he appeared in court, you know, he wanted a lawyer. Because the Constitution says I've got a constitutional right to a lawyer at a jury trial, and that's important because a jury trial. Well, a jury trial is the only right that we have that was guaranteed in all three of our founding documents, Peter. In our that would be our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence. Not the freedom of assembly, not the right to carry a firearm, the right to a jury trial. Is that important? And he thought, well, I should have an attorney. But the court said, sorry, we can't do that. We don't do that here in Florida. And he didn't just accept that. He filed a petition with the United States Supreme Court, ultimately, written on prison stationery and pencil, which is available to see on Wikipedia. Mm. And when it got to the Supreme Court, he was actually appointed an attorney there. And who was he appointed? A guy named Abe Fortas, who later on went beyond, was on the Supreme Court himself. And the Supreme Court ultimately ruled in his favor, unanimously, in a decision written by Hugo Black. And what did he say? The court explained why. Why do people get an attorney if you're indigent, if you're poor? And the court said lawyers in criminal courts are necessities, not luxuries. The right to one charged with a crime to counsel may not be deemed fundamental and essential to fair trials in other countries, but it is in ours. From the very beginning, our state and national constitutions and laws have laid great emphasis on procedural safeguards designed to assure fair trials before impartial tribunals, in which every defendant stands equal before the law. This noble idea cannot be realized if the poor man charged with a crime has to face his accusers without a lawyer to assist him. Now, based on the decision from the Supreme Court, there was over 2,000 people in Florida that were freed. 2,000 people, just because this man filed this paperwork with the Supreme Court on stationery from the prison. But his case wasn't overturned. His case didn't result in a dismissal. He got a new trial with an attorney, and he chose a guy named Fred Turner to represent him at the second trial. He did a good job. He hired an investigator. They found a cab driver who had seen Gideon earlier, getting in the day, getting into a cab, and the cab driver said that he had neither beer, wine, Coke, or a large amount of change in his pockets. And largely based on that testimony, which discredited the state's star witness, Mr. Henry Cook, he was found not guilty. And after his acquittal, Gideon kind of resumed his previous life and got married sometime later. He died of cancer in Fort Lauderdale in January 18th of 1972 at the age of 61. Gideon's family laid him to rest in a grave in Missouri. And on his tombstone, there's an inscription that he put on there from a quote from his attorney, Abe Fortas, in the United States Supreme Court. And the inscription says, "Each era finds an improvement in the law for the benefit of mankind." Now, the Gideon system is the system we have in public defense that is our database, and it's named for Clarence Gideon in his honor. And, tomorrow, when I go to court and represent my client in court, and she's got a tough case. It's a tough case. But it's because of Clarence Gideon that she'll be getting that trial with me as her public defender tomorrow. And Peter, I'm very proud to be a public defender, and it's because of that man in Florida that I'll be there tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. One of the things that we believe and try to practice at the Eastside Freedom Library is that stories have power. And the best way that we can learn is by hearing stories. And I just think it's great that we've started tonight's conversation with Scott telling us the story of Clarence Gideon, and how that established the possibility, the requirement that indigent defendants be provided with a lawyer. Thank you very much, Scott.
Thank you.
Now, I want to turn to a question that is both ironic, but also all too true, which is if this system was established to provide some sort of equity for indigent defendants, how is it that we now find that there is a lack of equity for public defenders and other members of the public defense team? And I wonder, why are we having this event tonight? We're having this event because Hennepin County public defenders and their staff are struggling to achieve a contract that they find reasonable and acceptable. So I want to put this out to anyone who's on our panel tonight. What are the issues that you're confronting? What are you asking for? What is the other side of the bargaining table holding back? How are these issues of equity and inequity for the public defense team today in Hennepin County? Who wants to have a first bite at that question? Please, yes, Darcy, go right ahead.
Yes, thank you. The most glaring one is that we have significant salary disparities with the people on the other side of the table from us. Starting salaries are between $10,000 and $20,000 less for us. Those disparities get worse the longer people stay. Basically, someone at my experience level could leave the public defender's office right now, go across the street and make $20,000 to $30,000 more and have better benefits. So it's very difficult going in every day and having, very stressful caseload, and every day knowing that the people that you're up against make more money and are just generally, more appreciated. It also is just distressing that that's how our clients are valued, that it's okay to underpay their lawyers. So, that's just sort of a daily insult that we have and that we're dealing with. The caseloads right now are extremely bad statewide. They're exceptionally bad in Hennepin because of the backlog from COVID. So now people are working more and more and more. Our clients' lives have gotten more difficult, and so we're spending more time social working with them, relying on our dispositional advisors, and it feels like less is getting done. Paired with the lower pay, we're having major attrition issues, lots of turnover, so you wind up picking up work from your colleagues who leave to go take higher paying jobs that are less stressful. I'm very frustrated at this point that this is where we're at. We've been, kicking and screaming that this has got to change, and we have some advocates out there, but it just doesn't feel like it's a priority.
Thank you, Darcy. Is there anybody else on the panel who also wants to speak to this?
I certainly can.
Yes, please, Ginny.
So I guess some of the inequities are just really resource allocations as well. I mean, it's very popular to say that you're, fighting crime and we're going to give money to the state. And I mean, you look at prosecutors and they have entire police forces at their disposal to do investigations. And if we're lucky, we have one, maybe two to be able to do that. You combine that with the fact that most prosecutors are able to be in the county in which they practice and typically are found either in the courthouse or right by the courthouse. And when you get into outstate Minnesota, a lot of us are having to drive great distances. And so, for instance, just today, I had a client who was had a settlement conference I had filed a letter into the court last week indicating that I had gotten an offer from the prosecutor. I explained it to my client. My client rejected the offer. He wanted to keep his pretrial and trial date. And I asked if I could appear remotely, because for me, that was going to be a 2-hour round trip drive simply to go on the record and say, Judge, we still need the pretrial and trial date, and we've done everything we can. This isn't a situation of we need to be able to communicate to get to an end result. And the judge ultimately denied that request and said, nope, because right now the statewide order is that scheduling conferences, which never used to actually be had pre-COVID, were now being had. And I needed to drive all the way in to do that. So it took up an entire half of my day, which is 1/10 of my work week, for a 5-minute hearing to go into court and say, Judge, I have nothing more to add to the record than what I put on the record in my filing last week. And so when you look at these inequities, that exist, it's not a big deal for a prosecutor to go over for a 5-minute hearing if it takes them 5 minutes to get up there and back. But in outstate, where we're struggling to be able to keep people, it's really difficult when we're then saying, okay, now judges are pushing their case clearance rates, and who bears the brunt of that? We do as public defenders. So another example is just Monday, I got an email that, hey, this client is set for a probation violation, and the revocation hearing, the contested revocation hearing, is being held tomorrow. Here's the info about your client. Because what judges are doing to get these case clearance rates looking great is when clients first come in and they apply for a public defender, instead of saying, okay, we're going to give you a public defender, we will reset this when you can come back with your public defender, they will say, we're going to enter a denial for you, and then you can come back. And the expectation is that we are to be prepared for that hearing. And frankly, that's just an inequity in being able to meet our constitutional mandates that are required from us, and our ethical obligations, quite frankly. And it's a constant push.
Thank you. I want to take a moment and mention that several people in the chat have pointed out that I misspoke about this being a Hennepin County issue, and listening to Ginny, of course, this is obviously a statewide issue. And so I'm sorry for miscommunicating the framework within which we're having this conversation tonight. I want to go a step past the issue of the inequity that the attorneys themselves and staff may be experiencing. One of the things that my interest in the labor movement has made me very aware of is how unions have taken a more assertive role in advocating for the people who depend on the services that they provide, whether these are personal care assistants, providing health care to people in their homes, or social workers and nurses and teachers, advocating for the people who depend on their services. And I wonder if any of you on the panel might want to talk about how the challenges that that you've just described this evening, how do they affect, in a way, to go back to Scott's introducing us to the Gideon versus Wainwright case, how does that affect the justice that your clients can expect to receive if their attorneys are working with overloaded caseloads and being challenged the way Ginny's described about travel and the choices judges are making? What kind of justice is being meted out to indigent defendants if their attorneys are facing these challenges? Someone on the panel want to grab that? Kyle, please.
I'm not an attorney, I'm an investigator, but I can tell you that one of the things that happens a lot to people who are in jail over a weekend or over a day is that they are given high bail and they can't afford that. And what happens is they are confronted by a prosecutor who makes an offer of plead guilty and get out of jail. A lot of people can't afford to be innocent. They have families to support. They have jobs to get back to. The economy isn't always what it is now, where you can just show up and actually get a job with an interview. It's difficult, especially in rural Minnesota. And I look at clients who can't, they're indigent. They don't have the ability to plan like you or I. They can't tell me if their phone is going to be on next week. They can't tell me if their car is going to be operational next week. They can't tell me if they're going to be able to even get to the courthouse. The obstacles that they face are overwhelming. And when we come into court, when those attorneys go into court, they have, like it was already said before, they're rolling a boulder up a hill. And that boulder doesn't stop, because every day they get more and more clients. The case closing rates are small compared to every day those more boulders coming in. It's difficult, but we're passionate and we don't stop fighting. That's where I would, and there are probably people who can speak better on this than I can, but I just wanted to say that it's hard to understand what the indigent are going through if you do not know what it's like for them to live.
Thank you, Kyle. I see that some of you who are in the audience are raising your mechanical hands, eager to get into the conversation. You may have joined us after I laid out the ground rules for tonight. We're going to stick to the panelists for a while. And if you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat, and we will try to communicate those to the panelists. Was there anyone else on the panel who wanted to respond to my question about the impact on defendants of the kind of caseloads? Yes, Ginny, please.
Okay, so first let me figure out how to lower this hand. Okay.
You're good.
So a real impact when it comes to clients. So we have our best practices as a public defender system of what we're supposed to do, and we have our ethical obligations. And so when we are so overworked that we are going from case to case to case, just barely trying to tread water and keep up to flow. You have fantastic attorneys who put their souls and their hearts into this. And we can't do what we're ethically required to do. And what that means is we can't watch our videos. And when we can't watch our videos, we miss things, right? We miss great legal arguments that could have been for that client that just get glossed over. And it's really concerning, because when I've gone to management and I have said, I can't do this. I can't get through my ethical mandates and watch and do everything that I need to do. The response that I've gotten from management is, well, you need to learn to work smarter and stop watching all your videos. And I find that extremely concerning, because that directly impacts my clients, whether I advise them to accept a plea offer, how I explain their case to them. I mean, it directly impacts our clients in a negative fashion, and they are not getting the representation that they're entitled to, unfortunately.
Thank you. I mean, I can even hear in the tone of your voice the frustration that you experience, the way this system is working. This is meant to be an educational program for many of us who are unfamiliar with the working of the public defender's offices and the way this system works. Some of us are privileged and lucky enough that we don't find ourselves enmeshed in the system. And so we're unaware of the working conditions that you all are experiencing. So I wanted to take a moment and step back and ask you to explain, what is the Board of Public Defense and how are members of the board involved in these conditions that you're working through? And Kyle, I believe you volunteered to tackle this question first.
Yeah, no problem. The Board of Public Defense is made up of members appointed by the Minnesota Supreme Court. There's also members appointed by the governor. There's also a chief public defender. I have been an employee for 15 years now, and I have never met a single board member. And I don't know why. I'm a local guy. I used to be on the county Housing and Redevelopment Authority. And to do that job best, I felt like I should go out and talk to people who rent and talk to people who rent their apartments and, building owners. And I'm just a local guy. That's what you do. I know that my county commissioner will go to the county highway department and talk to plow drivers. I know that my city councilman will talk to the police officers and will definitely talk to the guys who work at the wastewater treatment plant. And I know that the county, the school board members will definitely talk to teachers to find out what's going on. No one's ever reached out to me, and I'm available. I know that my fellow employees have never spoken with board members. I don't know if they're afraid of us. I don't know if they're intimidated by us, or my fear is that they're getting all their information about our needs from the county, from the chief public defender. Apology. And that's dangerous because you can't get your information from one single source. It's just not right. I know that we've listened to board meetings in the past where everyone has said that, we don't want to work from home during this pandemic. We want to get back into the workplace. That's not true at all. There are issues facing us that the board needs to know about and understand. And the best way to do that is to talk to the 700 employees. Pick a few. You don't have to talk to every one of us, but make an effort. We've made an effort to go out to them. And I just feel that if you want to find out what's going on, come to the source. And the source isn't the chief public defender and the chiefs within the districts. They're the employees who do this job every day. Support staff, attorneys, they make it happen.
Thank you. It's interesting that a number of comments are pouring into the chat, affirming the frustration of the lack of communication with the board. Darcy, you had also offered to address this question.
Yes, so just for reference, the state office is about 6 blocks from the Hennepin County office. In 8 years, I think one board member has been to our office. She came to teach CLE and she is no longer on the board. The board removed our chief without talking to us. And we had to basically beg them to say, hey, can you talk to us about what's happening in our office before you make decisions about what should happen in our office? We got a very lackluster response. There's really one board member who has responded when we reach out to them. But it's been difficult to even get contact information for some of them. That's how removed the board is from the day-to-day operations of what we do.
Wow, thank you. So having listened to you all, this next question almost seems like a no-brainer, but and that is, what is morale like for public defenders? And I know that Andrea volunteered to speak a little bit about morale. Andrea?
Yes, as a support staff person, morale has been pretty low. We did very well. We were very successful working from home throughout the pandemic. In our office, we even had legal office assistants who were able to monitor the switchboard from home. I'm not aware of any concerns or complaints that the management had about our performance, but yet our calls to be given at least a hybrid schedule or rotate have been met with either silence or denied. It's very, very frustrating. We lost a very good support staff person who is the second person who has left our office without a job to go to because of the stress. So morale amongst support staff at least is pretty bad. Just asking for flexibility like all of the other people in our office. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Anne, I know you have something to say on this question as well, please. Anne,
Unmute myself. There I go.
There you go.
I just wanted to indicate also that I feel the same way about the board's responsibility as a county commissioner. I certainly am always available to my constituents and the staff, and I feel as though that's just a given in the position that you hold as a board member. So it's disappointing that we don't have that repertoire with our board members. As far as morale goes, though, I reached out to some of the members and just asked for words that they would use to define the morale. Ones that I've been given are overwhelmed, tested, condescending, threatening, disrespectful, demanding, cold, ever-changing, exhausting, limited support, limited resources, limited time. I think that is a clear definition of what the morale is in the system at this time.
I'm struck on many issues that we've all faced in the last 2 years. We've come to realize some things seem to be caused by the pandemic, but many problems seem to have been revealed by the pandemic, that it's laid bare the racial injustices in our communities, the economic inequities in our communities, the inequities in access to affordable housing, that many issues have been put in sharper relief because of the pressure that the pandemic has put on. So in listening to people who have spoken already this evening, it seems to me that the problems that you're talking about are deeper, older, more and deeply entrenched than just the pandemic. And I wonder if any of you would like to reflect on that. That I know someone put in the chat that things are worse now than in the 34 years that she's been a public defender. Others of you have talked about the increased pressures that the pandemic has put on in terms of work schedules, working remotely, not being able to work remotely. How do you see this, the immediacy of the pandemic and the deeper issues that your experiences of inequity that you're experiencing?
I know that, if I may just start out real quick, I know that
Yes.
Darcy has some pretty clear directives of what Hennepin County has been dealing with the caseload. I can tell you that staff turnover certainly is a big impact on our ability to function as an organization, and it certainly deprives us of the opportunity to work as a group. We have afforded the largest law firm in the state, and it seems to us that it's a great opportunity to use those resources for our clients' benefit, and yet I don't feel as though that's ever been main focus of the board or management. And I don't want to turn the tables too much, but I do want to say that there are some positives to the COVID issue that has been afforded to not only the workers, but the clients. The remote hearings, I think, have been a wonderful way to be effective and efficient, to manage our time, to manage our clients' time, to afford them the opportunity to address their childcare. They're not sitting in the courtroom for 8 hours waiting for their case to be called. We have weather travel issues. They have no gas. They have no driver's license. They have no vehicles. In the last year and a half, my failure to appear charges have probably been reduced to about a 1% caseload versus what it had been in the past, because clients are able to get to court via their telephone or their iPad. I know that we never stopped working during the COVID. Our cases were still there. We still work the cases. I think one of the other positives that I've heard from staff is that the Zoom trainings during the pandemic were the most rewarding. They were relatable. It was wonderful to be in your own home, safe and comfortable and learning. And that was a big plus that I've heard. And one of the major things that I think we have overlooked is the safety factor, not only the COVID issues that affect us all, but the safety issues of having inmates in the courtroom with emotional victims, emotional family members, emotional spectators, and the consequences of that. So, you know, a lot of negatives, but I always try to find some positives.
Thank you. Anyone else on our panel want to respond to deeper issues than just the pandemic or how the pandemic is changing? Darcy, please.
Yeah, so I think the system has just consistently relied on us making martyrs of ourselves. It's built in, you know, the trope of the overworked, underpaid public defender is so tired at this point. And we're trying to push back on that, you know, we're highly skilled professionals. We do a really important job. We deserve to be treated better than that. So I think layering on top of, you know, that with, you know, all of the issues of the pandemic, and we didn't shut down. We didn't shut down. We were doing trials. There was a very brief pause in trials, but we were doing jury trials in Hennepin. So pre-vaccine, when everything else was shut down, you know, we were meeting with clients. I started a trial. I was in a 6x6 unventilated room with my client who was incarcerated. This meant that, you know, most of us who had to come and do that kind of thing, you know, you really couldn't see your families. You really couldn't do a lot of things. And then, you know, for everyone who's got kids, they have to worry about bringing it home or bringing it from the daycare because your kid has to be in the special emergency daycare when all the other daycares are closed. And you have to worry about spreading the disease back and forth. We've had numerous exposures, numerous outbreaks, and I think it just kind of like we saw everywhere else, that it's people hit a tipping point, like, how long can I do this? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this for people who don't respect me? You know, we have people literally being coughed on in court by COVID positive people. And just no one really seemed to care. So, you know, I think it pushed people in that direction. And I think it's different when people leave this job. You know, it's normal for people to quit jobs and people leave, they want to try something new, they want to do something different. But when people leave our office, they're always just kind of gutted about the decision. And I mean, we've lost, I think, 5 attorneys in the last 6 weeks. And it comes down to people really just saying, I can't have this job and my mental health. No one's saying that they don't like the work. No one's saying they don't like the clients. We love our clients, love the advocacy, we love each other. It is just not conducive to having a healthy life otherwise when you're doing this job. And the pandemic, you know, brought that into even a more stark, you know, picture for a lot of us.
Great, thank you. And you know, I think that at a distance, one of the things that many of us are aware of is what the media has been calling the Great Resignation, that over 4 million Americans quit their jobs last month. Listening to all of you tonight gives us quite a window into how these frustrations impact workers of all sorts, including public defenders and their staffs.
Peter, may I just piggyback off of that super quick?
Yes, sure, Ginny, please.
Okay, so to piggyback off what Darcy is saying, I walk in to my work day every day and I say, no joke, dear God, please do not give me an innocent person, because I don't have the time for an innocent person.
Wow.
Right? Because what that means is if I have to defend an innocent person That comes out of my time to be able to make dinner for my children, to be able to have a conversation with my husband at home about how was your day? What are we going to be able to do with the kids? Can you help the kids with the homework? Because I can't be a present mom. And we know as public defenders coming into this, that we are the last check on a system. We know that we're not going to win most of the time. We know that. We do it anyway. But here's the thing, right? We know that we're going to fight judges. We know that we're going to fight prosecutors. We know that we're going to fight probation agents, and sometimes we're even going to fight our own clients. But what we should not have to fight is our own management. And we shouldn't have to fight our own management for adequate pay, safe working conditions, and the ability to be respected for the professionals that we are. And I will just leave it at that.
Thank you. It's hard to hear you. And I so appreciate your honesty in sharing this with us. Dear God, don't give me an innocent person. I want to raise an issue or a question about some of you work part-time or some of your colleagues are working part-time. How does that work? Is that better, worse? What are the particular challenges that part-time staff, part-time attorneys are facing? Scott,
Yeah,
please.
I'd be happy to take that question. Part-time, that means less than full-time, right? So when I applied to be a public defender, I already was running my own private law firm. Now, about 40% of public defenders are part-time. I think Brian can speak to this for sure, but I think there's about 504 assistant public defenders statewide, and again, about 40% of those are part-time. The bulk of those run their own private law firm. There's a few that just do part-time work only, and that's it. But it's important to remember that why part-time public defenders exist in the first place, and the reason is primarily as conflict attorneys. And Peter, what does that mean? Well, for example, in a case, whether it's a drug case or an assault case, if you have two people that are part of the same incident that are both charged, you can't have the same attorney. So that means, usually a full-time office would get one of those folks, and then the other person would likely go to a part-time public defender that's not part of that office. So you don't have that ethical conflict within that representation of that case. So, part-time public defenders are extremely important to the system because you have to have them to have a healthy system, both for, just having a mix of part-time and full-time public defenders is important to. For example, I remember talking to Judge Sleater, who's now on the on the Court of Appeals. He used to be the district court judge in Renville County, and he a long time ago was a public defender. Then he was a prosecutor, and then a judge, and he had felt so strongly that there should be a mix of part-time and full-time public defenders in the system, and has always been vocal about that. So it's important to recognize that, again, the bulk of public defenders, Peter, are part-time public defenders are running their own businesses, their own law firms, paying their employees, paying the bills, all of those things that business owners do on a daily basis. And on top of that, we're public defenders. And, and we want to, be known as part-time public defenders and not just be given an unlimited number of cases. And one of the issues that's really a part of the contract dispute at this point is what mechanism is in place to limit that number of cases that can be given to a part-time public defender. And right now the answer is just the discretion of the management. And you really don't know that, I guess, when you're hired as a part-time public defender, that you figure, oh, it's 30 hours and that's it. Well, no, that's not it. And it really comes at the expense of chipping away at your private law firm, because you can only do so much. There's only so many hours in the week to devote to to whatever you do. I think, Jeannie said that herself. There's only so many hours that you have. And I agree with Jenny. We want to represent our clients and do a good job. Our clients are depending on us to keep them out of jail, to get their bail lowered, to be with their families, to stay out of prison. Now, many times there's going to be punishment involved because, people do things that they shouldn't be doing. That's true. But our job sometimes is to define what that win is. What is a win? Well, maybe if we get one of the charges dismissed, or maybe if we get the punishment lowered, or maybe if we get our client into a chemical dependency treatment program and get them out of the criminal justice system, that revolving door that can be very difficult to get out of, Peter. So, as a part-time public defender, I always want to say that, I'm a private attorney first and a public defender second. But it doesn't feel like that, Peter. It feels like that my time is consumed by public defense. It's an irresistible pull that we feel with the responsibility to put in the time we need to put in to represent our clients to the best of our abilities. But I'll get off my soapbox because but I just want to be aware that there's a difference between the two, and it's important that our supervisors and the courts are aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Ann, did you also want to speak to the question of part-time?
Certainly, yes. Thank you. I am a part-time attorney, 3/4 time. I believe the hours is 1,365 is a yearly amount that we need to put in, and just over my own personal time, I know that it's well over a year of time that I have given to the public defender system at not getting paid, basically, or getting paid to the degree that I'm not getting paid the hourly wage that I contracted for. So I do agree with Scott. Our clients are they're dependent upon us, and I think the group of people that Senator McCown talked about, in the fact that the public defender system and the other attorneys that we work with, they just have a way of making you know that what you do is so valuable and so important to the people that can't afford attorneys, and that we need to be there for them. That I think that the numbers that show on the public defender part-time timesheets, some of these part-timers are well over what I have given of my time. We're talking 700 hours a year over what they are required to give. And it just shows the commitment that the public defender system and the public defender attorneys give for the people that they represent. And I think that's the disconnect between the management and the board and the attorneys and the staff. We're so heartfelt, we're so committed, and yet we feel so abandoned. And we just don't abandon our clients. I know that we get payments, quarterly payments. There's certainly not enough for a person of Scott's stature who runs his own business. I don't run a private business. I'm just a part-time public defender, along with being the county commissioner and being on some boards and doing some other things of that nature. So generally those costs are limited for me, but I do know that some of the full-time staff, and I don't know if it's true in all districts, get an LOA assigned to them to assist with their cases. Part-time public defenders don't do that. I know that some get reimbursement for cell phone usage as a full-time attorney. I know that part-time attorneys don't get that reimbursement. So there are some differences, but again, I think that Scott pointed out, business-wise, it's just difficult to say that your business should not come first, but thankfully he is a part-time part-time public defender who is committed to the process. So thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Ann. So when I introduced the panel, I didn't say that all 6 of you are union stewards. And I wonder if we could shift now a little bit and talk about the negotiations. What are the issues that Teamsters Local 320 is bringing forward, or you're bringing forward through Teamsters 320? What are the issues? Where are the places where management is being intransigent, absent, deaf, whatever terms we might want to use to describe their response? Kyle, you want to take a first bite at this, please?
Certainly. I will let me lower my hand. Perfect. All right. I hope you can hear me. But I think there are some viewers out there who think that we are blaming management. I want to be clear. We are blaming management. A long time ago in the town I live, Blue Earth, they built a new wing on the hospital. People couldn't understand why. They just couldn't, spending money. And the hospital administrator told the people, if you're standing still, you're falling behind. And that is the case with public defense. 4 years ago, they said we needed more public defenders. Great. Legislator gave them some money. 2 years ago, they agreed we needed pay parity. This contract, they want to give us a 1% raise, a 1% cost of living allowance. It makes no sense. We're falling behind. Everyone who said we need to move forward and get more money, the prosecutors aren't lowering their wages. They're not giving their people a 1% COLA. It's just not happening. And when I say that, I mean that people who are trying to pay their college loans can't pay back those loans when they're making $15,000 less than their counterparts in the prosecution side or in the attorney general's office. It's impossible. And one of the other things that we are trying to make the board and the management understand is the ability to work from home. It's been said before, we go to jails, we go to courtrooms, and there are people there who are likely COVID positive. I work in a community and live in a community where the vaccination rate is just over 50%. When I go to the jail, when I go to court, or when I go out and talk to witnesses, the last thing I should be doing is going back to the work site and talking to my coworkers who could possibly get COVID or COVID breakthroughs. It's dangerous. All we want is the ability, if we can work from home, to work from home. We're not asking for anything. It's anything that's unreasonable. And the board is pushing back on that, and we don't understand why, because we think we deserve a safe working environment, and bringing and tracking COVID back to the work site is not something that's smart. It's not safe, and it's not a good idea. Obviously, we need caseload relief. We need, but it comes down to, right, for me, pay and work from home ability.
Thank you, Kyle. Scott, you've raised your mechanical hand.
Yes, I just wanted to follow up on what Kyle says. Obviously he's right in what he's saying, and we all of us feel passionate about being public defenders or public defender staff. I can hear it in Kyle's voice for sure, as well as everybody else. And but the reality is that whether it's me running my own law firm or being a public defender, part of life is to take care of our families too. Put food on the table, pay our bills, stuff people need to do, put your kids through college. Just the part of living your life. And it is a competitive work environment out there. I sent an email just yesterday to Brian and Gus about one of the public defenders here in the 1st District who is leaving to go, and he's in Scott County, going from the public defense office as a full-time public defender to the Scott County prosecutor's office as a full-time prosecutor. He didn't want to do that, but he did that because he has to pay bills, support his family, maybe buy a house, et cetera, et cetera. And that's sad. you know, when you have to leave the job that you love to do because of money. You know, it would certainly be nice if, you know, and remember the Board of Public Defense did get $15 million in this next, you know, this 2-year budget period for new money, brand new money with tails, right? So that's an important thing with legislation, with allocation of money. And there is money to pay public defenders, but it would be nice if the Board of Public Defense would actually go and get the money and ask, at least ask for the money that's needed. If they're told no, well, then that's the way it is. But as far as we know, they haven't even asked for the money that would be appropriate to fund the system. Why don't they ask?
Mhm.
You know, if you don't ask, you're not going to get it, Peter, right?
Right.
I mean, it seems to me that there should be a little more effort with funding, at least asking for the funding that's required to do these things, and to retain people that are well qualified to represent our clients. Because I can assure you that when my clients find out that I'm their public defender, you know, they want someone with experience. They want someone that will look out for their best interest, that has experience in working with judges and prosecutors and investigators and chemical dependency treatment programs, and on and on and on. That brings them a lot of comfort. They often ask me, you know, how long have you been an attorney? You know, they expect me to say, you know, a couple of years, you know, or just got out of law school or whatever. You know, and they're comforted to hear that, oh, geez, you know, I've been in one way or the other involved in criminal justice for 29 years. Then they don't ask anymore. So, and it's important to them, and there's a good reason why. You know, so I agree with Kyle's comments, and I hope the board will be, you know, a little more proactive in, you know, sharpening their pencil to find a number that they need to get for funding from the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Ann, you want to add to this, please?
Just briefly, if I may, I think, you know, keeping up with inflation is a mandatory, and, you know, fighting for parity, that's something we've been asking for years. I think managing caseloads, I think the public defender application form is never really honestly filled out in some cases. Pure example of how to control cases potentially is, I had a client who was sentenced. PSI revealed that there was $80,000 in the savings account, $40,000 in the checking account. The judge acknowledged it, but yet did not order any additional fees to the public defender system. So again, I think it stems from, you know, just the judges wanting, and rightfully so, the defendants to be represented. It makes everything run smoother, and I see their point, but again, we need to take everything into consideration, and that could be a major impact on our caseloads.
Thank you. Let's see, I'm getting a message. Oh, Kyle, you want to come back at this, please?
Just wanted to say one thing. A long time ago, we were lobbying for more money as usual. And the person said, elected official said, you know, being in public defense, you don't make $1 million, but you sure feel like it. Well, you know, we shouldn't have public defenders living like paupers. It's not fair. And we need to do real relief when it comes to pay and our salaries. And like Scott said, and I was reminded, because of our union lobbying efforts, we received an extra $15 million in our biennium budget. And the board has taken that money and is offering us a 1% COLA. That is, as my mother would say, I'm going to quote her, it's a sin and a shame. And it's something that we shouldn't stand for. And it's something taxpayers shouldn't stand for. We are trying to recruit and retain the best. And you can't do that on a 1% COLA. Thank you.
Thank you. Ginny, please.
All right, there we go.
There we
So here's what I want to say, right? The public defenders that I know, the paralegals that work with me, the investigators that are throughout this state that are talented, right? We are fierce, we are loyal, we fight from our hearts, and we advocate without shame. And we do it day in and day out. And we don't advocate for what we think we can get the judge to agree to. We advocate for what our clients need. We advocate for what they tell us that they want. And what I would like to see is I'd like to get to the point where we as an agency is able, that the management is able to advocate for our needs and wants with that same heart and that same ability to do that without shame or fear. So the rest of us can actually focus on our clients and do the jobs that we were hired to do.
Thank you. So I do want to say that we have done probably well over 100 programs on Zoom and Facebook here at the Eastside Freedom Library. And I don't think that I have ever seen as many powerful comments in the chat as I am seeing tonight. And I'm assuming they seem to be coming from other people who are working in this system. And I hope that those of you on this tonight have had the opportunity to see some of these comments in the chat. They're not so many questions as they are testimony to people who are having experiences that are being reflected in what the panelists have had to say. Now, I've gotten a message from my good friend Gus Fremke that Senator Jamie Becker Finn is on the call and that she would like to speak. So
State Representative Jamie Becker Finn. I am the chair of the Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law Committee in the House. And Gus reached out and invited me to speak with you all. And it was really an honor to work with Gus and Brian to get that additional funding. And I just want to let you all know that truly supporting our public defenders is my #1 top priority as chair of this committee. I don't think that that necessarily has been the case in the past. And, you know, I was even willing this year to not do raises for judges so that I could do more for public defenders and civil legal aid. Did not go over well with some folks, but I feel like I was sent here to you know, push the envelope and do things in a different way. And as a member of the Posse Caucus, I'm a Leech Lake Ojibwe descendant, grew up in rural Minnesota, and so some of you may know JD Schmid. He's my cousin. So I've heard for many years what it's like to be a public defender and about the challenges of the work that you all do. And so I, just given this opportunity to speak with you all and just, JD's pretty great. And I just really appreciate everything that you do. And I know that it's been an incredibly difficult, we're coming up on almost 2 years now of, really struggling with not just sort of the technology and the things like are on the surface, but knowing that all of you are also, carrying the trauma that normally comes with this work, and then dealing with the additional losses in our communities, the additional stresses on our families. And I just want you to know that there are some of us in the legislature who recognize that and know that, and are fighting to try to make it better. And I am hopeful going into this next legislative session. The budget outlook is really pretty good. I've been a chair. I didn't know it was going to be a weird question to ask, but I've asked, instead of just giving me a number, what would it actually take to fund public defense at the level that it should be funded, to have the caseloads that our citizens deserve, that our public defenders deserve, asking those questions that are more difficult. Folks are so used to fighting over just getting a little bit more than the year before that they don't know how to think about it in a way where we're actually saying, what is it that we need? Now let's figure out how to get there, instead of working backwards and saying, oh, we only have X, I'll just ask for a little bit more than X. And so really trying to reframe that in the way that we think about this. And I'm advocating it every step of the way that I am one of the very few funding public defense is one of the very few things that is constitutionally required of the legislature when we fund different things. And so, you know, very making that top of mind and reminding our speaker, reminding the governor's office, reminding everyone just how important that is. So just wanted to weigh in. I'm sorry I couldn't join and listen to the rest of your event. We had a chairs meeting over Zoom and then a posse caucus meeting via Zoom, but definitely wanted to make time for all of you. And again, just want to thank you and share some of the frustrations about the ways that increased funding has been rolled out. Have certainly let some of those frustrations know with let others know about those frustrations as well, because that was not my intention when I went to the mat to get that additional funding, that you guys would be getting a 1% raise in a pandemic where we're lucky to have you all doing the work that you do. So thank you so much to all of you. And Gus and Brian know, you know, if you need to reach out to me via my legislative email, I'll put it in the chat if folks want to reach out, and certainly would welcome any of you to testify when we have the public defense budget up again next year. So thanks for your time, and thank you everybody for what you do.
Thank you, Senator. And let me just add that the recording of tonight's panel discussion will be archived on the Eastside Freedom Library YouTube page. And if you have colleagues that need to hear not only the impact on public defenders and their staff, but also the impact on their clients and the impact on access to justice for many indigent people here in Minnesota, please take the link for that YouTube video and share it with your colleagues and encourage them to watch and listen. It can be a useful tool. We've heard a great deal of depth and detail this evening. Thank you for joining us. So on that, I'm going to wrap up and say thank you to everybody who's spoken and everybody who's listened and weighed in the chat. This has really been an eye-opening and heart-opening presentation this evening. For someone who cares about workers and unions, this has been very powerful for me to see whether we're talking about people working in nursing homes or hospitals or courtrooms, that the conditions under which you work impact the people who depend on the services that you provide. I'm very moved by what I've heard. I'm sure that many people out there, either listening live or listening to the recording later, will have similar responses. So thank you all. I want to thank Brian and Gus for having arranged this evening, and our 6 panelists for taking time. Now that we know how hard you all work and how little time you have for things outside of your work, it means a lot to us that you've shared some of that with us this evening. And again, I want to thank my colleague Carla Reilly for handling the tech, and encourage you all to direct people to the archived video on our YouTube page, which should show up in a day or two. Thank you all. Stay safe, stay well. Keep your union strong. Thank you.